Ordinarily in the GHL Business Launch group, I spend most of the time talking about structure and strategy and theory. Today is going to be different. Today is going to be implementation of the ideas, not random tactics, not shiny objects, and it's not an abrupt shift from theory to technique. It's a practical example of how the strategy becomes execution. What we're going to talk today about is where the rubber meets the roads. If you've been watching through our previous sessions, today is where the structure that we've been talking about starts taking a concrete operational form. And to be clear, me presenting Terri today is not saying that every business in the room should start revolving around email and SMS marketing. This tool, this set of skills, is one example of how a real service can operationalize the larger strategy that I've been talking about for the last several months. In this time, we've been laying foundations. We've talked about decision authority. We've talked about business structure, identity and economics, access to resources, the business models, pricing of your services, effectively, what business you're actually building. And one of the reasons that we did all of that first is really simple. It's the idea that just because a tactic exists doesn't mean it belongs in your business. Just because a service can make money doesn't mean that every operator should immediately organize their business around that particular service. But what we come to today is, at some point, every strategy must become execution. At some point, somebody has to implement something. At some point, somebody has to create value for the client in a way that can be described, priced, sold, delivered, and repeated. And that's what today is about. In our broader marketing framework, what Terri is going to talk about today touches on the whole system, but it lives especially close to lead nurture, follow-up, engaging with the contexts that are already in the database. Many business owners are already sitting on what is essentially low-hanging fruit: the existing customers, the warm prospects, the old leads, people who already know who the business is, leads that were already captured but not converted, and therefore still eligible for nurturing. But the business owner might not know what to say. They don't know how to follow up, and they often don't realize the value that exists within their list. And most of the time, that's not because they're lazy. It's because they don't know how to reach out without sounding pushy, desperate, or annoying. So today is not a generic copywriting session. It's not a send more emails conversation. It's an introduction to a practical service delivery methodology. It's a way for an agency owner or a freelancer to create real value for the business owner through direct response messaging. And the reason I asked Terri to join us is because I was in her beta test. I saw the material, and I don't want people to miss the opportunity to learn from someone who has actually done all of this at a very high level. Pun intended. Thank you for the grin, Terri. So Terri Sassone is the founder of a 6-digit digital marketing agency, a specialist in database marketing, email marketing, SMS strategy. Across more than 40 niches, her campaigns have generated more than $30 million in sales, closed sales for the clients. She earns $100K annually from database marketing clients alone, and that's separate from lead generation work. What I appreciate about Terri is she's very practical, direct, and not hypey. She brings real results without the guru energy. And she is especially strong at helping businesses and agencies see the value that is already existing inside their customer and prospect lists. She knows how to turn follow-up into real revenue-generating service through database reactivation and relationship-first messaging. I met Terri when I was first introduced to digital marketing and high level. She was part of the team that was teaching me how to sell and implement marketing services using the platform. I have continued to follow her journey as she has shifted back to her focus on her primary service offering. And so when she announced this training for how independent operators can follow her proven strategies, I don't know how quickly I opted in, but I was fairly early in, and again, appreciate your grin. I was fairly early in opting in, saying, Terri, I want in on this. So before we get into like teaching, Terri, could you give us like some insight into your history, your journey, what it is you do, and why this particular topic matters so much to you?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Loud
Okay.
and clear.
So I started as I've lived many careers, I guess I should say. But one of my, like my heart business was a dog daycare and boarding facility. And I ran that for 4 years. And then we did $1.4 million in dog daycare, boarding, training, grooming, retail. And then a little thing called the recession in 2008 hit. And in 2008, I peaked. I did 1.4 million. In 2009, we dropped down to like $300,000. And I had to make and I had bought the building. Like I was all in on this. This is what we were doing. And I thought I had survived and I thought this was going to be amazing. But when you're in California and you're in the county that has the second highest unemployment rate and the fourth highest foreclosure rate, doggy daycare is just not important. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So I went down in a blaze of glory. Is there any other way too? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 10 years to like emotionally recover from that because I felt like I had failed my family. I had put us in an unrecoverable financial situation. I let the dogs down because we had a rehoming program that over our 10-year, we rehomed over 400 dogs. And I got into a for-profit business to be able to do the
Mm-hmm.
work with
Mm-hmm.
rehoming dogs because I like dogs better than humans. And I'm not afraid to publicly say that. But anyhow,
Maybe
so
that's why.
I went back into corporate IT and hated it. I just absolutely hated it. And I kept seeing ads for this digital marketing course, the one that Keith mentioned we met in. And I decided in 2018, I was just done being pulled around by these big IT corporations. And yes, I was making phenomenal money. My
Mm-hmm.
bill rate was between $300 and $500 an hour. And that
Mm-hmm.
sounds amazing, and it is amazing, but I had no control. I had no life balance. I had none of it. And I was getting to be of an age that I wanted to take more control over. And I will add, I won't make this like political. However, being a woman in the IT industry and working for 3 decades, making about 60 to 67 cents on the dollar to my male counterparts, that chaps your hide.
Yeah.
So and in my dog daycare and boarding facility, I controlled what I earned, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time ever in my life that I had that power until the recession. And so I knew I wanted that back. And I jumped in all in 2018 and then in 2019, I had hit multi six figures in my digital marketing agency, predominantly lead generation. Yes, some lead nurture, A lot of consulting because I did have a business development background from IT, and
Mhm.
I would just bring that, pardon me, bring that to smaller businesses, right? Because they need the same functions, they just don't know they do, and they don't have the frameworks and all that. So that's what I did. And in 2020, a little known thing happened that the 26 wellness businesses, brick and mortar, that I was working with were immediately shut down due to the COVID pandemic. So I basically thought, well, crap, here I go again, something completely out of my control, nothing I can do about it. And I sat in a ball for about 8 weeks and said, I'm gonna fail again. And again, not because I wasn't getting results and not because people didn't love the services, but because of an external force that I have no control over. But interestingly, I had started working with some e-commerce clients, just doing email and SMS. I wasn't really doing any lead generation. And when that happened, my brick and mortar businesses went, but my e-commerce businesses were going crazy. And I was like, okay, obviously they're open, right? They can be open. They're not a
Right.
physical location. They don't have restrictions on, I mean, in California, you couldn't touch another person, right? So how are you going to be a massage therapist? How are you going to, give somebody a facial? How are you going to really do anything?
Right. Right.
So I was like, well, what can we do? Like, this isn't going to last forever. What can we do? So I mapped out all of the email and SMS flows that were working for e-commerce businesses and said, how can I lay that down into local businesses that have a list, and what's that look like? And it came down to I came up with 10 services in that space that I could offer. The only two I couldn't offer were cart abandonment and browse abandonment because those are predominantly e-commerce. Well, guess what I did?
Mm-hmm.
I told my brick and mortar people, get all your products up on Shopify.
There you go.
Yeah, hair coloring kits, skincare, shampoo. People still need all of that. They don't want to order from Amazon. They want to order from you. And so we did that, and that was wildly successful. And then we started what I call now, my database marketing tactics. And the first thing I sold was audits and assessments. What's the size of your list? How many of them have opted in for email and SMS? When's the last time you emailed them? What kind of emails are you sending? Okay, let's look at deliverability. Do you have your DNS set up right? No, not a single one of them did. So it all kind of fell. So I always started with an audit. And as a business owner, if you're offering services, I love audits and assessments for two reasons. One, you get somebody to pay you. And now you do the findings, you immediately elevate yourself to the expert. Immediately, right? So they've paid you once. Odds are, if you find problems, they're going to want you to do the remediation work. I never tied the two together because when you said I don't have guru energy, I actually have anti guru energy. Like, I never want to hold a gun to someone's head and you have to do business with me. You're not going to get this report if you don't know. Nope, nope, nope. Everybody has free will and stuff. So then what I would do is, if they hadn't been adding or emailing, I would start with, in the go high level world, it's a database reactivation. I think Rob Bailey is probably the person who coined that.
Yep.
And I would just look at their database and we'd come up with a really good offer and we would run that. And typically we were getting, in the email marketing world, one of the biggest metrics, everybody wants to talk about open rates, click-through rates, all that. Yeah, that's great. That just lets you know if you're starting to hit the mark. However, with all the privacy things, all of those numbers are inflated. They're not accurate. All you're doing is
Right.
tracking over time. Like you truly do not know what the open rate was. You truly do not know. Click through is a lot easier to measure. I want to know revenue per subscriber. We sent out an email to 500 people and we made $10,000. What is that revenue per subscriber? And so that's what I started, really measuring too. And then I tested this with businesses that were closed during the pandemic with gift certificate offers. So when we reopen, bundles like come in, get a facial, and we'll do, a hand mask for free. I really, when I work on offers, I want it to be, yes, we're going to give a discount, right? Nobody says, sell me your most expensive thing. We're going to do a discount, but we're going to do it in a way that preserves margins for the business. If they are
Important.
already there in your chair or on your massage table or wherever you have them, I work a lot in the wellness space. However, I have done database marketing in over 50 niches now. I can always find an angle. Just about. The one that's the trickiest is funerals. Because typically you only have one funeral and you only buy one headstone. But if people are doing like Google ads for that, you absolutely are nurturing those people who inquire about your services. Everybody else, you have repeat buyers, right? Even tax accountants. Oh, tax season's over. Yeah, well, there's estate planning. There's, you know, tax tax, I don't want to say evasion, that's the wrong word.
Planning.
Yeah, planning, strategically planning, maximize, making sure you're maximizing you're keeping every penny you can possibly legally keep. That goes on year round. That isn't just tax season and stuff. So there's always an angle. And I knew I was onto something when in June of 2020, June, July, and August, I was working with a cryotherapy studio. They had opened back up in California. They still had no contact though, but they had a lot of services that were no contact. You could put them in the cryotherapy machine. You could put them on a EMS muscular stimulation machine. You could put them in an infrared sauna. So there were quite a few services that we could do, and we could do no contact. And in 3 months, we did 80 grand. And that from flash sales, right? And that to me was like, I'm on to something. Okay. And I went to every single one of my clients that hadn't closed and said, look, this is what I'm doing. I think you should do it. And not all of my clients made it, which was heart-wrenching, but 80% did, and I would say this was a very large contributing factor to it, because when small businesses applied for those grants and everything that the government was running, they didn't get them. Ruth's Chris got them. These big franchises got them, but the little guy did not get them. And so I was helping out the little guy. And so once I saw that worked, well, then I was like, how do I now turn this into a system like I had with e-commerce? And it turned into, we'd start with the audit. The very first thing we would roll into is a database reactivation. Then you need a welcome sequence. I don't care if you're not running ads. You need a way to grow your list. QR codes and flyers. Then they opt in. They get, a discount. They get whatever. Now they're on your list. And then I started doing weekly newsletters. I don't think any business should send any less frequently than once a week, because your competitors and everybody, I don't want to bother my clients. Guess what? Your competitors are bugging the crap out of them. So you need to stay in there and do it tastefully and tactfully, right? Then I also found doing product launches, like, that works in a local business. It never dawned on me, but I had a client who wanted to launch teeth whitening as a service. And she's like, I don't know if it's going to be worth it or not. let's do a product launch sequence. Let's see if there's the interest. Not only was there the interest, she had all of the equipment, the supplies, all of that paid for before she even delivered her first teeth whitening treatment. So that's huge. That's huge for businesses. Landscaper, they bring on a new employee, his schedule isn't booked. Guess what? You're going to do a product launch, 20% discount, free mulch, whatever it is. I don't even care. When you book with that person, any business, new hires, it's one of the quickest way to recoup that money that you've sunk into hiring a new person. Win back sequences. If they have not been in the wellness business, it's 90 days. If we don't bring them back in 90 days, there's an 88% chance they're churning, right? So every industry has a churn point. Like, what is their greatest risk of when that's going to happen? That's when you do the win back. Customer satisfactions and surveys. Send those out. Review and testimonial request. Send those out. Then the final offering is a sunset email. And that's for people who haven't opened. A lot of people, just leave them sit out there. Well, depending upon what package you're working with, Go High Level isn't as a big a deal of this. However, if you send out 3,000 emails and only 1,000 get open, that does hurt your reputation and deliverability. So you need to trim off those inactive subscribers. So that's what we do with the sunset. You've been on our list for a while, noticed you haven't opened. It's a Hail Mary, but you know what? If you even bring 1 or 2% of your list back, that is phenomenal, right? Because it's not just the person's that's on the list, it's who they know also. Like, who could they refer you to, your business to, and all of that. So people are like, how do you have a 6-figure agency just doing email and SMS marketing? And this is it. I charge anywhere, and I don't like to count money publicly, but my email engagements are anywhere from $9.95 for a basic package to 10 grand a month. That's an e-commerce client. That is somebody who's, we're emailing daily. There's 12 or 13 automations firing based on what a client does or doesn't do. It's lucrative. It's high margin, so high margin. So that's how I got here. That's how I started doing it. I still have the one thing that this did teach me, though. I will never, ever, ever sell lead generation without a database marketing package attached to it, because I went from 30 to 35% of cold traffic converting on Facebook to 50 to 72%. Now, they might sit there for 6 months, and then all of a sudden a newsletter, a flash sale, or whatever hits, and they're like, okay, that's the one. And what we track everything. Like, when we're running flash sales, we track, is it a new client, existing client? If it's an existing client, had they been in the last 6 months? Like, we want to know all of that, because that's where the magic starts to happen. Like, I have a woman who, her list is 750 people. When we started working with her last May on lead generation, she had 150 people on her list. Her list alone has generated $48,000. 750 people. That's the kind of impact that I'm talking about.
The size of that list matters with the dollar number. That matters a lot to put it in context.
Oh, 100% it does. Yeah, 100% it does. I've had a single flash sale, usually Black Friday. I love Black Friday, shop small Saturday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. One of my favorite things to do in that season is on Giving Tuesday. If you buy the offer, then the business is donating something. We almost always do either a food drive or a clothing drive on that day. And If they bring in an unopened can or whatever of food, then we do a BOGO, buy one cryotherapy session, get one either free or 50% off. A lot of times they'll do it free on Giving Tuesday because we're giving, right? And if you promote that, we've also done socks, we've done clothing, we've done like shampoo, like those sorts of things for like homeless shelters that, people, they need the supplies and stuff like that. Those are some of the most powerful and high performing campaigns I run. So I Black Friday, that whole month, it's now Black November. is it's my Super Bowl. Uh, I think no, seriously, I
Yeah,
think
no, I'm
this
laughing
this
because it's
last
perfect.
year, I think we did, oh my God, I think we did $15 million. And I produced 3,500 um, messages, I or my team. And what's nice about that is sometimes the holidays slow down and the first of the year slows down. So when you come in and you nail it for a client, and they pull in 50, 60, 80 grand in November, that helps through the lean months for that. But yeah,
Sure.
so that's how I got doing what I do. I still have a full digital marketing agency, but it just, became so ingrained in what I do that, a lot of people think all I do is email and SMS marketing. And I'm like, no. And I used to get in the group we met in, a lot of people, oh, she's the email marketing queen. I'm like, there's no crown. Do you see a crown? There is no crown. And then I had a friend of mine say, just pick up the crown. Just pick it up. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. But nobody's heard of me, right? Like nobody's heard of me. I'm anti-guru. I'm just out doing my thing. And I love to help other agencies and freelancers do this because this is one area that our industry does not capitalize on. And I can tell you it generates way more revenue long term than any lead generation campaign. And now they go hand in hand because you got to keep growing the list. This only works. This is a big caveat. This only works if you are continuing to grow the list. If you are not, you get to run 2 or 3 of these promotions and your list is done, right? The same, I'm not saying you can't still get good results, but I have a farm to table Mexican restaurant that does dang near $500,000 a year in email and SMS marketing. Now, they've also launched 2 food trucks, which I've paid for. Thank you. An
Uh-huh.
event center that they now have next to them. And they use it in very practical ways. Like pardon me, if their reservations are looking pretty lean, because reservations are recommended there, they'll run come in Thursday, 11 to 4 and buy 2 entrees, get a dessert, right? And we have the booking link right in the text, and boom, 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 and we can just watch it. Deep, 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 deep. Oh, look, we're on a wait list now, And then that's how we paid for the food truck. It was hilarious. I get a text, and they're like, "We kind of did a thing," and I'm like, "Oh God, what'd you do?" And this is this dilapidated food truck. I mean, I was like, does it run? They're like, it does. It's got good bones. Like, okay. And so we did $80,000 in 5 text messages or 5 messages. 5 emails. Actually, it was 5 emails or 5 texts, 3 emails. And what we did was we gave them the biggest thing to make this work. And I think this is where a lot of people get hung up and they are afraid or whatever, is working the offer. The offer has to be a win-win. It has to work for the business owner, and it has to be something that's desirable for the client. And I get this a lot. Well, I don't want to discount my services. Great. How you doing at full price? Usually it's deers and headlights, right? You're not
Right.
doing so good now, are you?
No, not so much.
Okay. So let's come up with something. And I mentioned with the wellness studios, it's like they're already there. What can you do while they're already there that's a high perceived value, but doesn't cost you in labor or supplies? Because you've already sunk that. They're in your chair, they're, wherever they're at, they're already there. You're paying the electricity, you're paying the employees, you're doing all of that. What can we add on? I did this I sat down and we figured out hourly what it costs to run the truck. And we found out the first 2 hours were the most expensive, because that's when the people are getting the most excited. They're ordering all the things and stuff. So what we did was we ran an offer to their existing list for the first 20 people to book a 2 hour food truck engagement. You got the third free because the cost to that business owner to operate that third hour, negligible. It didn't cost them more
Right.
in gas. It costs a little bit more in food, but the food consumption first 2 hours are peak. The third hour, not so much. And in the same labor. Okay, so you're going to pay somebody, 1 extra hour. And they said 20, and they were sold out in 2 weeks, and they actually sold 24, because if anybody had started a conversation but just hadn't wrapped up the deal, they weren't going to say, "Oh, you're number 21. I'm so sorry." No,
Yeah,
you lose a
right.
client for life if you do
Right.
that.
Right.
So then at those first 20 created 60 full price reservations, because people, again, me and my QR code, want to book us for your next event, little QR code right there as people are getting their yummy food, scanned it and booked. So yeah, so that's kind of, I love what I do. I love helping clients. I think people are intimidated by it. They think that, you have to be, to me, email and SMS is the easiest tech lift. It's the easiest. The funnels are the most simple. Um, I meet people where they're at. I know that largely this is go high level. Well, if I come across a client and they're in MailChimp and they're delivering and they don't have any deliverability problems and they're already A2P, their version of A2P, I'm not moving them.
Right. Don't change the tech stack just for the sake of the change the tech stack.
Absolutely not. So at one point, I was working in like 14 packages. But guess what? Email builder is an email builder. An SMS is an SMS. Like, it's really easy. And if I would hit something that I didn't know how I was doing, I'd just Google, how do I do, or no, YouTube. I would YouTube, how do I do XYZ in ABC program? And, and a lot of the packages have really good support. So yeah, everybody's like, oh, you're high level. I was like, I don't do lead gen without high level, right? I don't. That's ridiculous. I do a lot of database marketing without high level, but only if they have a viable product already in place. That's
Yeah,
the caveat.
that
I don't
totally
move
makes
them.
sense.
It does. It just, yeah, because you're going to change their sending IP. You're going to change like so many things about it. You're going to end up, you need to treat it like a brand new list now. And how I came to this is I was working with a waxing franchise, and they were in MailChimp, and they're sending $380,000 or 380,000 emails in one send. We didn't even have to drip it. That's how mature and ingrained their sending environment was. And I looked at, like, it would have taken me probably 6 months to get there. And I don't know that I could have gotten the rates that they were getting. And they were doing, that's another example of somebody doing $250,000 a year or a month. I'm sorry, $250,000 a month in email and SMS. The money's huge. I think a lot of people just, don't think about it, or it's the redheaded stepchild of marketing, if we're honest.
Well,
Instead, it should be the leading one.
and I think so, Terry, I think one of the things is it doesn't look as flashy as being able as producing a amazing lots of graphics on an ad and or even an organic social media campaign with matching graphics on a landing page. So the funnel's all
Congruent.
yes. And we throw around this, it's a high converting funnel. Well, we don't really know that it's a high converting funnel yet because we haven't run it yet. It just looks good. But we invest a lot of energy in those kind of um
Ugly
products
landing pages
be-
convert better.
because
It's a fact.
yeah. And
They just do. And my emails are so ugly. They are so low design. I'm typically the header is something, with the company. It may or may not have their social badges up there. And then plain text, one image, and then one call to action. It's super simple. I may have one or two links. I have one image because the spam filters are ridiculous now. Like, they're ridiculous. They're not just looking at the text to image ratio. They're looking text, image, link, all of that. Like, they're just looking at all of it. So plain and simple, short sentences, lots of open space to let it breathe, because they're going to be, reading it on a device. And, anytime anybody sees a block of text, they're just, nope, peace out, not going to do it. Yeah, I don't write the most boring emails. I send the most boring emails, just from a aesthetic place. And a lot of, like, if I'm in the coaching space, like, I work with quite a few coaches, it's all text. It's not even, anything. We might have one link in there
yeah,
to, like, a school group
yeah.
or a YouTube channel or something like that.
Yeah, plain text works really well.
It does.
And people will complain to me about, well, how do I get past the spam filter? Well, and then other people will say, well, you write valuable emails. And I'm looking at the email and they say it was valuable. It has all these pretty graphics. I'm going like, those pretty graphics are the spam filter doing its job. The spam filter
Yeah,
recognizes those graphics as a marketing message and it's protecting the user.
correct. That's their job. 100%. 100%. Yeah, no, it is true. Well, and I put a lot of, like I said, the numbers, it's very, very hard to get accurate numbers in email. In SMS, like, SMS claims, oh, 97% delivered. Okay. All right.
Right.
What you can track is the money, right? Because that's the other thing too. I make it, if they're running a promotion on social media, I'll run the same promotion in email, but it'll have its own link so that we can track
Sure.
where it came from.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I try not to, typically what we do is actually write the email, and then they post social media after it, right? So instead of email supporting the social media actually props up the email, is how we do it, a little bit different. But yeah, um I will say, knock on wood, again, I hate to count money in public, and I have a team now. So when I give numbers, it's not just me. But my effective hourly rate for what I get paid and what we produce is about $600 an hour. That's like surgeon money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're producing that kind of effect for these small businesses who
Yeah.
otherwise they're spending money on people who are designing pretty landing pages for them.
Yeah. And we
and
in my
not converting.
agency, we're 100% lead ad now. We don't even do any, we don't do any landing pages. I always used to, don't anymore. The cost per lead is obscene. And my approach to lead generation is a little bit different than others. My job is to open as many conversations as I can at the lowest possible price, right? Or cost. So I go in thinking 70% of my leads might suck. They might.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But that 30 to, and it's not that big, but in my mind, right? And I prepare my clients for that. And now with Meta's AI, literally going in and changing targeting on your ad because it wants it to get a better reach. Anyhow, that's a discussion for another day.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm just saying, like, the gold that comes in off of that is well worth it. Still, still.
Yeah. So, um, you're you're Terry, you're exactly the level of passion, the level of assurance, the level of
Crazy.
well, but okay, but crazy um in the zealous mo version, not the mentally incompetent capacity. Um,
Correct.
what is Savvy Sender? What is your vision for Savvy Sender? What is Savvy Sender not? And then how would somebody respond today? What would we want them to think about today?
So,
That's
Savvy
three parts.
Sender is a email only course because why would it be anything else? Where each day you're given like just a chunk, like a little bit of an insight. Because what I've also created full courses, and the completion rate is abysmal, right? And I don't want to just create content and get money. I want people to get results. So I created it's called Savvy Sender. I thought I like a good alliteration. And I think that that's kind of describes me. Like I am a savvy sender. I've learned, I've dug in, and I've, tested and broke and saw what works, what doesn't. And so it's a 30-ish day email only course that covers pretty much all the tactics that I use in my agency. Like each day you just get a little bite size, probably about 1,500 words is all. And it's just going to expand your knowledge a little bit. And our hope is at the end of 30 days, you feel confident offering email services. And the other thing too, like my numbers sound like so amazing. But what like say you only want to do newsletters and you're going to do you're going to do 4 newsletters a month. I on the regular charge anywhere from $3.95 to $5.95 for that service. What if you got 4 of those clients? Like it just starts compounding so fast. And so that's kind of my thing. I want people to take action on what they learn. Don't feel like they have to do all of it, or build the client an email flyer that they can set somewhere in their business with a QR code that sends them to a welcome thing. I charge $1,900 to do that. If you've never done it before, charge $695, charge $795. When I first started out, oh my gosh, I think I got for my first email gig, I got $85 on Upwork. And you would have thought it was 8,500. I was like, holy crap, this works. Yes. I was at a conference in New Orleans and I stayed in on a Friday night and wrote that email template. And I just started stringing those together. I'd offered it an introductory price. When I sold 3 of them and got results, I upped my price. I sold three more, got results, up my price. So
Hmm.
I didn't start out charging this, you know.
Yeah.
Um, to me, I got paid to learn how to do this. I
Yeah.
did. I was on the job training. I got totally paid to learn how to do this. And then all of a sudden, 2, 3 years later, you're looking back and you're like, holy crap, what happened? You know, and I don't know about your group, but I would think if you got, you know, 3 or 4 people paying you $5.95 a month, that's not chump change. And
That's
the amount to
uh-huh.
deliver it
Hmm.
is, you know, when I first started, I was probably about an hour and a half an email.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now I'm
So,
30 minutes.
still, if you're doing one email a week for 5 clients, and it's even if it's 2 hours, literally that's
It's 10 hours.
one day work, maybe a day,
Yep.
maybe 2 days worth of work.
Yep.
Um,
And the more you do it, the faster you get. And with AI, you know, obviously you can do it
and
faster. You got to
right,
do it right, though. You
and
can't
that's
just you
because of
have
time.
AI
Yeah,
slop it out there.
because of time. One of the topics that we could dig into is the AI, how AI
Well,
fits in here.
there was
But
3 parts. So that was part one. What was part two of the question?
fair enough. But specifically, the Savvy Sender course is going to include you telling us how to use AI well, so that the emails that you're actually sending are still human relational instead of AI slop.
Yeah, there'll be an email on prompting,
Yeah.
right? Like how to do it, how then to test it, you know, to make sure. And it's again, it's over some like I just keep things simple. Like I if AI writes something and I read it and I would not say those words, don't send it.
Yeah. Or
Don't
like
send it.
my intro and conclusion here are drafted by AI, but I'm not reading off of my chat GPT. I'm reading off of a Word document that I edited.
Sure,
And sometimes
absolutely.
I would word it, if I was talking like this extemporaneously off the top of my head, I would word it slightly differently. But when I'm reading this intro and conclusion script, they telling a message that I agreed with the chat GPT. This is the message I want to communicate. Um, so yeah, it's how you leverage the AI to communicate the message. It's without being a slave to whatever words it just vomits and just regurgitating
And in dashes.
that. Yes.
Don't get me started. And
I,
honestly and
mhm,
truthfully, AI, honestly, oh, so what? You were lying to me before. Now you're going to be honest?
mhm.
Truthfully is the same thing. Like,
Yeah,
they don't understand like human psychology, you
yeah,
know, that, oh, that sounds, you know,
yeah.
weird. Anyway, okay, what was part
So,
two?
so specifically, part two was what is it not? What is Savvy
And
Sender
what is it
not?
not? It is not a bloated course that is going to include a bunch of crap you'll never use. It literally is lessons on what I do in my agency. And when I show people what I do, a lot of times it's like, that's it?
Mhm.
Is it really not more complicated than that? And I'm like, it's not more complicated than that. It just
Yeah.
really isn't. So it's not a bloated course. It's one bite at a time. I think we talked about like I have an outline, obviously, because you were in the
Hmm.
beta part of it. And we have like I have must covers, but what I did
Hmm.
when I did the beta is if I didn't cover something and I was like, oh, you know what? That's a great question. That's why I said 30 days ish. If we get feedback and there's something we didn't cover, well, guess what? We write an email that covers
Hmm.
it, you know?
Yeah.
And you're not gonna have a PhD in email and SMS marketing, but you will have, that's a won't, but what you will have is very practical, tested foundation that will make you think every client, because another thing too, I don't know what a lot of your members, like what types of services that they're delivering, but it's really email and SMS marketing is a lot easier sell also because it's something the client understands and they understand they should do it. They don't know how to do it and they don't want to do it. They don't, business owners don't want to write emails. I get that all the time. What if they see my emails and they just decide to do it? And I was like, first off, I don't think I've ever had that happen. And second, all of these things that we think these business owners are gonna do instead of hiring us, BS. Like I was a
Mm-hmm.
business owner operator.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-uh. They
Mm-hmm.
no. I'm worried about covering shifts if someone gets sick. I'm worried
Mm-hmm.
about, oh
Mm-hmm.
crap, our CRM just went down. Oh
Mm-hmm.
shoot, a machine just went on the fritz.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no,
Cleaning the toilets.
yes, 100%, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. So, I think at the end of 30 days, anybody that does it, reads them, will have confidence to have an email conversation with a prospect or do what I did and went back and retroactively added it to every single one of my clients that I wasn't offering it. I gave
Yeah.
myself, when I first figured this out, I gave myself a $4,800 a month raise in monthly reoccurring revenue just by offering newsletters.
There you go. Awesome. So what
Crazy,
do,
huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, there,
What was part three?
yeah. Well, I would put a pin in that for just a second because I
Okay.
can, and
Okay.
then we'll wrap up. Um, and I'm actually going to not do a close. I'm going to let you close. Um, and so here's part three. This is the close. You get to close. What do what would we want people to do today? But before, right, so that's how do they give us feedback? How do they decide what to do
Is
next?
this going to be a post in the group? I assume this
That's
is streaming live. It's going to
yeah,
be a
we're
posted video.
yeah,
I have no
so
idea what this is.
okay, so we're streaming live
That's what I
in the
thought.
GHL Business Launch Facebook group and also in the collab group, but the audience is a lot smaller in the collab group. Um and so I have drafted a poll to let people answer the poll, but I don't necessarily need to publish that if we decide we want to have the response a different way. Um, you said a couple times, I'm not sure what your dollar value of your the audience in GHL Business Launch, both the Facebook community, 5,500 people, 5,400 people, and 700 some odd people in the collab group. Well, Terri, there's a lot who are making significantly less than that annually, but even the ones that are making significant amounts of money, $4,800 a month is significant income for any agency.
I agree. I agree. And I was really annoyed with myself that I didn't think of this idea fast. Well, because here's the thing. It did
Mm-hmm.
offering this service, it did a lot of things. And then first off, it helped my clients in
Mm-hmm.
a time that we had never experienced with us alive, right? A pandemic. I'd never marketed through a pandemic. Business owners had never operated through a pandemic. I mean, not in our time for sure. We've read and had history lessons on smallpox and the different things, but it
Sure.
was crazy. So this one service, I know for a fact, saved 18 businesses. I know for a fact, like I know it. And that was in the worst of circumstances, right? The worst of circumstances. And my churn rate on lead gen clients before this happened, they would churn at like 6 or 7 months of just lead generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now my churn rate, I have clients, I've been doing lead generation and now email marketing because we
Right.
layered that on since 2019.
Yeah.
It is such a sticky service.
Hmm.
And if you're doing lead generation and you aren't doing this, then this really is for you because it just puts your results on fire. Like, I'm not kidding when I say a $30, like low ticket $30 ad, is $29 actually. $29 ad over the course of 3 years because of the upsells and the value ladder and stuff that we've built, $1.4 million. And we were getting leads at $6, right? So when you add this to lead generation, the lifetime value of the client goes through the roof for both you, the agency, but more importantly, your client. The stickiness, the bring the people back, all of that. Yeah, I mean, it goes crazy. So that's why I don't even have a package. You can't even buy lead generation for me that doesn't have database marketing in it. Now, there's different levels of the database marketing, right? But there's not a single one. So as a business owner, especially if you're an agency owner or a freelancer, I think one of my favorite success stories is somebody who I mentored, stay-at-home mom. And she wanted to bring meaningful money into her household, but she had 4 kids under the age of 6. How are you going to do that?
Right.
Us mamas out there and dads, how are you going
But
to do that?
yeah.
She landed over the course of 6 months. She landed 10 newsletter clients, $4.95 a pop.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
there's little levers that you turn that get big results, not only for your clients. I'm client first. Like if I try something that doesn't work for a client, okay, we're not doing that again. But it's not only big levers for your client that make them more sticky, but as an agency, it increases your lifetime value of client too. Even if you go back and you're going to do 2 newsletters a month at $2.95, right? You just increased, if you've got 5 clients, your monthly, recurring revenue just took a big tick up, probably went up by 25-30%. That's not insignificant.
Yeah. It's very significant. Awesome. So how do you want people to respond?
So I'm really casual. Remember the whole anti-guru thing? You and I have been talking about this for a couple of, probably 6 months now at this point. You know, if this is something that you guys think you want, right? Like there's no sales page, there's no
No.
opt-in right now. We're literally gauging interest in a 30-ish day email dripped course with weekly Q&As, place to ask questions for the duration of that for under $100. If that sounds good to you, if this is a poll he's posted, do that. If this is a comment on this post, do that, just so we can see.
Yeah.
Just so we can see, because that's it. I just want to, gauge interest. If there's interest, great. I'd love to come in and do it and work with the group. I think that'd be amazing. If there's not, that's okay too. We're not going to know unless we ask.
Fair enough.
There, that's my close.
All right. So whether either comment on this post, or I'll go ahead and put the poll up as well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely
either
do it. Yeah.
way, I'll get a sense for how many people we're talking about. And if it's a significant enough number that it's worth your time, then we'll pull the trigger in May.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Awesome.
And
Thank
hi,
you,
people
Terri.
out there. You're welcome. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.